Welcome to this Skills Spotlight session on performance. My name's Dave Gerald, and I'm the Skills Development Consultant here at Edinburgh Napier. So what we've got for you today is a blended session. So I'm going to start by sharing a couple of training models, which are designed to give us a bit of an insight into the structure of how we develop performance, and hopefully a bit of an insight into how we might individually look to develop our performance going forward. I'm then going to be joined by some Napier alumni guests who are going to share their experience of how they've developed their performance in their careers. So let's get into it, and let me start by sharing the training materials that I've got for you. And I'm going to start by sharing this, which is the conscious competence model. Now, you might have come across this before, and if you haven't, you'll probably recognize what I'm talking about as I get into it. Let me make it a little bit bigger so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is the model that explains the process we go through when we learn anything, whether it's developing a skill or building a new aptitude. We start from that initial step of unconscious incompetence. We don't know what we don't know. So if you relate this to maybe a practical skill that you've developed, maybe learning to play a musical instrument or driving a car, you think about that first step. So before you've picked the instrument up or before you've sat behind the wheel of the car, you've no idea how good you're going to be. You might be the next Hendrix or Lewis Hamilton, or you might be like me. You've no idea. So we don't know what we don't know, and that's our starting point. And then we have our initial experience. We start to develop some awareness, and then we get to a point of conscious incompetence. We've got a bit of an idea about what we don't know now. We've got an idea of the scale of the journey that's in front of us. It might be, oh God, that was tougher than I thought. This is going to be an uphill struggle. I've got a lot to learn. I'm really going to have to dig in. Or it might be, and you know what, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Maybe I've got a bit of natural aptitude for this particular area, wherever it might be. So that's what gets us started. That's what gets us moving. And then training and feedback is what drives us on, moves us up that staircase of competence. And we get to the point of conscious competence. And that's where we can do it. We can operate well. We can drive the car. We can get out of tune as long as we're focused, as long as we're concentrating. And it's the same with professional skills. You know, I'm now at a point where I feel comfortable and confident to deliver a presentation or participate or run a meeting or whatever it might be in terms of our professional capacities and our professional lives. Ultimately, we can get to the point of unconscious competence, and that's where muscle memory started to kick in. We can do some things almost on autopilot. You've done your 20-minute commute that you do on a regular basis, and you've got out of the car and you don't remember the last 20 minutes. You've almost done the journey on autopilot. Or it's at the point where you're comfortable and confident. You know that this is a skill or an aptitude within your professional environment that you know you've got this. It might not be all of it, but there's elements. Think, no, I've nailed that. I'm good at that. I know I can do that. You're not stressing about it when you're going into that particular challenge. So this is the process we go through anytime we're developing a new skill or a new aptitude. So why am I sharing this with you? Well, I want to make 2 points in particular. The first point is this: it's a process, and it's always a process. So if you're facing a new challenge, if you're developing a new skill, if you want to drive on your performance, and there's something that you're finding a bit sticky or a bit of a challenge, remind yourself that it's a process and give yourself a break. Not all challenges are easy. You know, sometimes it's more of a slog for us to develop and build a new skill. And as long as we're making incremental gains, then we're moving forward. So it's always that process. So don't put too much pressure on yourself and calibrate according to the challenge that you're facing. The second point, and the second principle around it, is to look for evidence and feedback, because that's the only thing that drives us forward. Without feedback, we're practicing archery in the dark. You've no idea how well you're doing, if that's an improvement on what you did last time, if you're making progress. So we need feedback, even if it's painful, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's difficult to hear at times. Feedback is the only thing that's going to drive us forward. So be hungry for it and look for it, seek it out. Now, the other model that I want to touch on is kind of built on this, but then goes beyond it. So I want to touch on the 10,000 hours theory, which you may have come across. It was put forward by the neuroscientist Daniel Levitin, but it was really made popular by Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers, and it got latched on by social media, and there was all of a sudden everybody knew, it was received wisdom. Everybody knew, yeah, what do you need to do to become an expert? Do something for 10,000 hours. As long as you do it for 10,000 hours, you'll become an expert. Not quite. So it does hold water. So the research is valid. And when we look at people who've been, really preeminent in their fields, no matter what age they've come to prominence, when you look at their backstory, there's been this kind of amount of practice and development in their past to get them to that point of being really kind of expert and accomplished. But, and it's a significant but, just doing something for 10,000 hours won't make any of us an expert. If I do something at a really poor level for 10,000 hours, then I will become efficient at doing something poorly. I won't become good at doing that particular thing. It takes more than just repetition. And there's more than just that. And this is what leads me on to the model that I really want to share with you today. And that's this performance grid. And there are 4 bricks on this grid. And all 4 of them are really important factors if we want to analyze where we are, where we want to get to, and how we can build and drive our performance. So that first brick is purposeful practice. So 10,000 hours doing something at a low, ineffective level just becomes efficient at being ineffective. But purposeful practice is that looking for feedback. We're back to our conscious competence. We're looking for those incremental gains. We're looking for that 1% development every time. And that purposeful practice is us applying ourselves, really putting effort in, really putting that drive into what we're trying to do and seeking that feedback and information in order to make progress and make gains. So it's not just practice, but it's purposeful practice. The next brick that's really valuable is coaching support. So purposeful practice on its own might get us there, but if we really want to accelerate our performance and our development, we need support, we need coaching. Not all coaches need to be able to do what we want to do. And what I mean by that, if you think about elite sports people, their coaches can't necessarily do what they can do, but they can spot the things that will help them rebuild their particular swing in golf or golf, the tennis stroke or whatever. They can see what that's working for you, that's not right. Deconstruct that, rebuild it, and they can see from the outside looking in how to develop and how to build performance. They might not be able to do it themselves, but they can see how to help you develop. And it's the same with coaching support. It might be that you have someone who's in a more of a mentoring role and they are where you want to be. And so you want to understand how to follow that path and get to where they are. Or it might simply be someone who can help you to spot the areas where you're perhaps not progressing in the way that you'd like to, and what it's going to help and what it's going to take for you to make the progress that you're looking to see. So coaching support is really valuable. Then there's a couple of really kind of internal factors. And one is around drive and motivation. Are you really doing the thing that lights a fire within you, that really kind of lights you up and is the thing that gets you jumping out of bed in the morning, and you're really doing what it is that you've got a passion for? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not rose-tinted on this. I love training work. I love the work that I do. Are some days tough and some days a grind? Yes, absolutely. I'm not saying that everything is going to be sunshine and rainbows, but underneath it all, if we're going to push through those days that are a grind, if we're going to push through that purposeful practice and find ways to start moving up that staircase, if we're doing the things that we have a real drive and motivation for, that internal drive, that's what makes a difference. That's what we tap into when things are tough. So are we driven and motivated to be doing what we're really wanting to do? And then the fourth brick is mindset. And this is a whole field of its on its own, but it's really important when we're looking at our performance. So when we do hit challenges, problems, difficult feedback that it's hard to hear, perhaps at times, what's our mindset towards that? Is it, okay, I'm not there yet, I'm working towards it, this is useful, this is another piece that will move me forward, might be slow, might be fast, but I'm going to get there, and that mindset around growth to get to where we want to be? Or is your mindset around, well, I've been criticized, I'm not going to try and do that again? And is that limiting you? Is it what we call a fixed mindset rather than a growth mindset? And all four of those factors are really valuable in driving us forward, developing our skills and building our performance. And so if you wanted to look at where you are just now and think about how you can build your performance and take it to the next level, this gives us a lens through which to look at that and look at where we are and think, okay, what are the bricks that are in place for me? And what are the bricks that perhaps aren't so strong? What are the bricks that I maybe need to put a bit of time and effort and attention on in order to get something that's more solid, in order to build that platform, to progress my performance and develop my skills? So that's our training content. That gives us a bit of a framework to think about as we go into our discussions. So let's meet the guests that we've got with us today. So thanks for staying with us and joining us for the conversation part of our training session today. So I'm joined by two Napier alumni guests, Daniel and Caroline. But rather than me speaking for them, I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourselves. And Daniel, you're on my top left on the screen, so I can come to you first.
Hello, thanks for having me. My name is Daniel. I am currently the Business Excellence Manager at Yugo. We're a global student housing operator. I started with Yugo pretty much as soon as I actually joined Napier in first year. I joined as a resident assistant in one of their student accommodations in Edinburgh, the one that I was living in at the time. So I've been with them since then. It's been almost 7 years. I studied event management and marketing at Napier and graduated kind of just towards the tail end of COVID. And since then, I've had probably an interesting career. I've stuck with Yugo throughout my last 7 years, and I feel like it's a good opportunity right now to kind of chat through it and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Daniel. And Caroline.
Thanks, Steve. I'm Caroline. I currently work as the Event and Sponsorship Manager at SSEN Transmission. So in the energy industry, if you've heard of SSE, SSEN Transmission is one of the companies in SSE, and we are the big pylons that you see, or towers as we call them here in the countryside. I studied event management at Napier as my undergraduate degree, and then I did a master's degree in business management with entrepreneurship, and I also did an accredited course in project management. Just trying to rinse the university of everything I could before I left. Immediately after university, I moved to work for Santander in London, and then a year and a half ago, I joined SSE.
Fantastic. And thanks for joining us today, guys, and for sharing your experience. Now, I have to start with the fact that you are both award-winning alumni from Napier. So I need to ask you about your respective award stories before we get into the rest of the session. So Caroline, can I stick with you and get you to share your award story from Santander?
Yes, of course. So during my final year at Napier, I took part in a Santander University's initiative, which was the internship scheme. So whilst I was still studying, I was paired with a local business called Business Fives in Edinburgh. And it was basically a scheme that Santander ran, which helped support students get tangible business experience while they were still studying, but it helped local businesses with the support they need because it was part funded by Santander. So it was a win-win from both sides. And they did, at the end of the year, they took all the interns that had taken placements across the different local businesses that had got involved, and they had an award called the Santander Student Intern of the Year Award. So they looked to see who had maximised the most from their internships. And I was very aware that because this was the end of my degree, after I'd finished this internship, I had my degree on a piece of paper and whatever I could say in an interview, and that was it. So I knew that this internship was almost my last chance to grasp as much tangible work experience as I could before I then joined this extremely competitive environment of every other graduate that had graduated that year going for all the same jobs. So I felt the pressure, but I also was aware of the opportunity I had. So I basically looked at my CV, saw how empty it was, because you need to be able to do work experience as well as having a degree if you go down the university route when you're applying for jobs. So I said to my boss at the time, I don't know how to do this, or this. So some examples were, I'd never done SEO before, so search engine optimization. I'd never designed anything on Canva or made marketing materials. I'd never been to a networking event. I'd never done sales before. So I went into the internship with the intention to get as much of this as I could under my belt before I left, and I did that. So it meant at the end, I looked at what was an empty CV, and it was quite a full one, and I was able to demonstrate that at the time when the awards were happening, and they said that I'd done a good job. So I won the award, and I was then offered a full-time position with the internship company that I was with. But I also received a mentor with Santander, which ultimately led to how I got my first job with Santander after graduating university. So that's the award. I won't go on for too much longer, but yeah, it was an amazing experience, and I was very, very grateful, and it opened a lot of doors, even with the mentorship that Santander provided afterwards.
Awesome. I've got a point I want to follow up on that, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to ask Daniel to share your story, Daniel, and then we'll maybe see if there's one or two bits in these that we'll pull out.
So last year I was nominated and awarded the Alumni of the Year, the Rising Star Award, which I've very conveniently placed behind me on the shelf, a little wooden block. Yeah, exactly. I've got Napier, the scroll up here, I've got the award over there, all on brand. So the Rising Star Awards, I suppose it came a little bit left field for me because I had graduated for like 2 years. At this point, it was nice to get acknowledged, obviously, by Napier, but probably most of it was work that I'd done with a charity called Edinburgh Students Charities Appeal. So a couple of years ago, when I just started second year of uni, we got a little emailer from David Jarman at the time, who was our course leader, and he basically told us about this volunteer event called the Meadows Marathon, and they were looking for volunteers to organize it. And it's a marathon hosted in the Edinburgh Meadows. I volunteered. I became a registration officer, planning a lot of the logistics of the event and the marketing and everything. I loved it so much, and that event was owned by ESCA, which is quite an old organization. It's about 155 years old, and it supports students from across all Edinburgh and the Lothians in their fundraising endeavours. So it supports students to fundraise money for charity, for their chosen charities. So it provides logistical support, provides grant aids, all these different things. And I became quite interested in the organisation. I ended up joining the board as a student board member. And then after graduating, I was voted as chair of the board. So that was a big step for me. It was a post-COVID situation, so having to navigate a charity, quite a big one in terms of its scope and its history. So post-COVID recovery was tough. And then I think potentially that's might have been why that award was slipped in there. It was nice to kind of acknowledge some of the work, but also to put ESCA's name out there, because I feel like it's one of those things where people recognize the events that we do, recognize Edinburgh Rag, recognize Hitchhikes to Paris, the marathon, all of these things, but don't really know the team behind it that make it happen. So yeah, that was in summary what that award was for.
Fantastic, and I think you're right, and you're both, really strong examples of trying to build a broader CV and a broader experience and skill set that you're then presenting. And we do this in many ways. I mean, whether it's a part-time job or whether you're supporting people or whatever it might be, it's that richness of our backgrounds and experiences that really sells ourselves to employers, and the ability and the qualities that we've got to offer. And Caroline, you mentioned the fact that it was a pressure and an opportunity, and I'm just interested, how do you manage that when you see that that's something that there's a real opportunity here, and I can really showcase my skills, it will add to my CV, but there's real pressure to it as well because it's a new thing and not done it before. How do you approach that?
I felt my boss was amazing, and he was really good at. I think there's a difference between being asked to do something new and then requesting to do something new. So because I was under pressure, I didn't wait to be told, okay, today we're going to let you try this. I asked him, and I took all these asks for things that I'd never done before to him, and he was amazing and said yes to all of them. And I still adopt that now, where if there's a job that I think one day I would love to do that, I look at what the job description is and what I don't have, I try the best of my ability to do in the job I'm in now. So look for an opportunity to do that. And so I think that's ultimately why I was awarded that award, and how I was able to make the most of it wasn't just by waiting for the opportunity to come, but seizing it. But I feel really passionately about students who've just graduated, because I remember what that felt like, being part of that race to apply for graduate jobs, and going through the process of it's not just putting in a CV, it's all the tests, all the asks that come after it, all the video interviews where you have to answer a question that pops up on the screen, and numerical evaluation tests and situational evaluation tests, and it is so exhausting and so difficult and so draining that you really need to just grasp every single resource and opportunity you can. So hopefully that's a very long-winded answer, but hopefully it answers your question of how I was able to use the pressure as a force for good as opposed to let it get the better of me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it really highlights a couple of things that I'm going to circle back to in a few minutes in terms of the second model that we talked about. But I wanted to move on a little bit and talk about kind of how you've got to where you are now, and what's preventing you. You've touched on this already, Caroline, with that explanation, how you've got to where you are now within your careers. Now, Caroline, you described it as a race, and I get that. I know what that feels like for students. It's almost like, right, degrees, though, here you go. We open the doors to the graduation hall, and everyone goes running out frantically looking for the first opportunity and getting in. So it is that real kind of sense of pressure and opportunity, hopefully, at that stage. Daniel, your story is really interesting because you were with the company, as you said, right from being a student and then all the way through. So I'm really interested in your journey and how you've got from, because you were with them and then kind of grew with them through your degree and then beyond, how that kind of works for you and how you took yourself forward.
Yeah, I suppose I was quite lucky in one sense, the fact that I was afforded a lot of opportunity through Yugo and being with them. I joined at a time when we were in 4 countries and now we're in 15. So it was a time when the company was growing and they needed people to grow with them. But I think also I did feel a little bit of the pressure. Like I felt quite lost after I graduated. Even though I'd been with this company for a number of years, I had been doing administration. I've been doing sales within our buildings. And I just kind of thought, do I stick with this? Do I hop on that race, that Caroline is talking about, where do I start applying for other jobs? And it was a real kind of crossroads for me because you're not ever guaranteed career progression with the company that you're in. People tell you that you should always be applying for other jobs, moving around, things like that, and I was in such a weird place at that time. And after I graduated, there was a little secondment opportunity for me. They were looking for teams to go to Spain. So I went to Barcelona for a couple of months and I helped with sales there. And I learned quite a bit, didn't speak any Spanish, but I tried to, plow my way through as best I could. Luckily, I was dealing with quite a lot of US clients at the time, so it didn't go against me. But I was like, right, this is it. Like, I've got sales experience. I've got experience in multiple markets now. I've worked in the UK. I've worked in Spain. And then I came back from that comment and I was just kind of back in my little administration role, which was really solid and a really good place to be after graduating. But I still felt like everyone else around me was doing like so much. And I was seeing that on LinkedIn and I was seeing people going for different internships and different graduate programs and everything. And I was like, oh God, I feel like I'm not really doing anything. I feel like I've just been stuck with this company for years and like, should I have done more? But you do kind of have to force yourself in that situation. You have to force the opportunities in front of yourself, and you have to, it kind of all relies on you. And I kind of realized that, yes, there was really good people in Hugo that supported me and maybe led me down a certain path and gave me opportunities, but I did kind of have to fight my way for it. And kind of like what Caroline said, I had to take those opportunities to put myself in not risky situations, but situations that necessarily I felt like I might not be able to do. So I pushed to manage our summer sales. So during the summer, when our students go home, we need to sell the buildings, and that's one of our most risky times of year. You know, during the academic year, we're guaranteed students. There's always going to be students in our key markets. During the summer, it's incredibly difficult. So kind of put my neck on the line. And I was like, I'll manage summer sales for the UK Ireland. It's a role that didn't exist before, and I just kind of wedged myself into it and formed it, and probably took on a lot more than I should have. Probably was burning the candle at both ends at times, but it was really good, and it probably was the stepping stone. I had quite a lot of imposter syndrome throughout the whole thing, though, because I was thinking, oh God, I am so not really qualified for this position. Like, this is a revenue manager role, and I don't even know how to calculate ADR, but I'm Googling it and I'm figuring it out. And it's not what I studied. It was totally like beyond me, but I just thought, you know what have I got to lose? And I think it was good. I'm glad I did it. And obviously, with forcing myself into positions like volunteering with the charity, I got lots of experience through ESCA, and I took on quite a lot of responsibility there. So I feel like, I don't know if I've answered your question, but I think I've had to like really wedge myself into situations and try and fight quite hard. And not that it is a fight with other people, more of a fight for yourself, because it's sometimes I think you can kind of hold yourself back and go, well, I've just graduated, so I don't really know what I'm doing, or, oh, I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing these things. And it's kind of like, well, you never stop feeling like that, I think.
I would wholeheartedly agree. I still have exactly those those feelings and that experience at times in my career, and that's a little bit further on. But that's a fantastic example, Daniel, of that conscious competence model. And right, I'm going to push myself. How hard can it be? I'll give it a go. I'll try that. Oh hell, no, there's a lot to do here. And then but it's that feedback and trying it and just having to drive yourself forward and start to move up those steps in order to develop the skills. And I think in some ways it's almost more difficult and more nerve-wracking when you're looking for that progression within an organization that already knows you, because they know you. And it's not like you can walk in an interview and say, this is me, and present this this perfect candidate. I'm sure you were the perfect candidate, but they know that. They know you. They've seen you in operation. So it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, you can't present anything that you hope you're going to grow into, but at the same time, you've had that opportunity to actually showcase and demonstrate your skills. It's an interesting position to be in. For yourself, Caroline, in terms of getting to where you are now, I know you went through Santander and then you moved back here. So what's been the thing that you feel that's really driven you forward in your career so far?
So Napier provided a lot of opportunities and a lot of connections that still benefit me now. And even though I'm going to start with my career now, a lot of the things that I did whilst I was a student were really influential on my current career. So, for example, because I had won the award, which was an initiative that came through Edinburgh Napier that I'd taken part in, and I received a mentor with Santander on the back of that, I used that mentorship as an opportunity to express my interest in wanting to work for Santander, and I ended up getting an interview for a project manager job. And it was with Santander University, so they still do a lot of work with Edinburgh Napier now, and they're amazing. If you don't know what they do, look them up, because they've got so many fantastic initiatives and programs that benefit people of all ages and no matter where you are in your career. So it really is a good company. But it wasn't a graduate job. It wasn't an intern job. It was a project manager job. So I remember when I got this interview, despite having been denied from what felt like hundreds of graduate jobs I'd applied for, here I was sitting in an interview for what I felt like was beyond a graduate job. And I was able to, I remember one of the questions they asked in the interview was, what was an improvement that you made in the workplace? And that's a very common interview question. You still get asked that in interviews now. So if you can't think of an answer to that question right now, do something so that you have an answer prepared for when that time comes. But I had taken part in a program at Napier called the Get On Board program, which was a program that helped students get on the board of charities. And one of the sessions that we did, they took us to Anderson and Strathern and did a session on GDPR, which sounds boring, and it kind of is, but it's also important. So and I'd remembered some of the key learnings from that session. And when I was doing my internship, the internship that I won the award from, I noticed that there were opportunities to improve how we were doing our GDPR, and I was able to back that up with evidence from what I'd learned from the class. And I was able to say that we need to do this, or this will happen, and we could do it this way, or this will happen. And it resulted in changing a process, changing a system that had been in place, and me coming in, was the reason why it was then changed. So just having that one example, it sounds so small, but it was something really tangible that I was able to say in an interview that then got me the job. And I felt like getting that job at Santander was the biggest jump I had ever made. I had massive imposter syndrome. I moved to London for it, and it was in Santander's headquarters, and I just had to keep doing what I had been doing, which was, what do you not know? And the answer was everything. At the time, I didn't know anything. So and how would you then? It goes back to your model of unconscious incompetence. I was very aware of what I didn't know, but I knew that the perfect time to be transparent about that is when you're right out of university. So I thought going into it, I almost had to fake my way through it. Like I had to prove that I'd earned the right to be there. Like imposter syndrome, it makes you think that you've lied in the interview because you've told them that you can do these things, and then you're in the job and you're thinking, I can't do this at all. Actually, that's the age where people expect you to say, I don't know how to do this, and you'll never be met by anything but support. So I continued that process of, what do I want to be able to say, or what is my next job, or what's the next skill I want to be able to say I can do, express that I can't do it, and ask how I can. So when I was at Santander, I knew one day I would love to be a line manager. I'd love to manage someone, and I know that that's a good skill to put on your CV, and it's also a certain skill that if you don't have it, you might not be able to apply for certain jobs. So I'd mentioned that at the time. And although I couldn't be a line manager at that point in time, fair enough, because I was right out of university, what I could do was take on as much tangible skills and experience that were transferable to that. So I got involved with recruitment and interviews. So I was allowed to take part in interviews, do note taking, do questioning. I took ownership of our team's diary management and holidays, so annual leave. So looking at the calendar, when requests come in for annual leave, can we do it? Is there enough resources to be able to manage the workload that will be, taking place at that certain time? So I did all these things when I was there. And then fast forward to a year and a half ago, when I made the move, moved away from Santander back to Scotland. So working for SSE, I continued that path of gaining transferable skills and experience for line management. I went out my way to find out if the company had a graduate or an internship program, and they did. They had a graduate program. So I asked if I could be a graduate's mentor and support. So it's not a line manager, but graduates take turn going around different teams, and one person is assigned to look after them during that period. So I took on a graduate for a couple of months. And then at the end of that, because I now had quite a strong bank of experience, I put forward the official case to my line manager. I said, I'd love, we have a need for a team now. There's a lot of stuff we could be doing in the events and sponsorship space that I don't have the resources to do on my own. I've got all this experience that I've built up. Can we bring someone on? And the answer was yes. So I've actually just today done 2 interviews for that person, and I'll be doing 2 more tomorrow. So as of this week, I will be hiring someone to support me. And yeah, it was on the back of all these small incremental steps in developing my skills in that space.
Fantastic. And that's such a good example of looking for, as you say, that next step and how to build that skill set. And that point you made about this is the stage where you ask the questions. I think that's such good advice, because so often we do feel, and whether it's going as particularly as you're going as a new graduate, but I think often when you start any new job, well, I've got the job, so I need to prove that I can do it. And actually, yeah, companies should never hire someone who is the complete finished article. You hire somebody who is going to grow, is going to develop, is going to bring more skills and aptitudes into that role. So yeah, that's a really, really good piece of advice about this. This is where you ask the questions, and this is where you try and find out more. So really valuable. So that's a really interesting insight into how you've got to where you are. I'm interested about where things go next, and thinking again about the models that we've talked about, and that second model about those bricks around conscious competence, around purposeful practice, and start to consciously build up your skill set. And Caroline, you talked about your boss being a really good kind of mentor when you were at Santander, and that's what enabled you to move on. And that made me think about that second block around having a coach and having someone who can support you to take those next steps. So I'll stick with you, and then I'll come back to Daniel. But so where next? What's the next step for you? What's success going to look like, and where do you want to go with it, and how will you get there? How will you continue to develop that skill?
Yeah, I'll maybe just make one comment on the mentor point you made, because this is something when you're at uni, you're often told it's really important to get a mentor when you are in your first job, and sometimes you don't know what that means. But for me personally, I know this might not be applicable to everybody. I use when you start a new job and you don't know what you're doing, a mentor is the person who I ask, what do I do? Because there comes a point where you might feel like if you have been hired to do a job and some people might then feel like they can't constantly ask their line manager, what do I do next? What do I do next? Because there does come a point where you then need to take that step, that leap of faith, and you do need to take ownership, and you do need to start doing things without being asked. But that middle ground of when that time comes is so blurry, and it's such an awkward stage to navigate, that having a mentor was amazing for me. And I've had a mentor in every workplace that I've been in. I have mentors in SSE now, and it's good to pick someone who doesn't have a direct influence on your job, but they are in a position in the company that they can support you with connections and building the bigger picture. So I think that is the number one piece of advice I would give anybody who is starting in a new job, in a role they're not familiar with, and they're nervous about anything. Find yourself a mentor, and any question you don't know, just ask, how would you do this? What would you recommend? How would I go about it? And I just think that is that transition from university to how you navigate your first job. In terms of what's next for me, I've been successful in securing one person to manage and support with events and sponsorship. I'd love that to be a team one day. So who knows if my line manager is going to watch this and gulp at the thought of me asking for more headcount, but I would like to progress that. And with that, at the moment, we do so much in the events and sponsorship space that it was too difficult for one person to do it. So that was why I had the needs case to bring someone else on. I would now argue, and that was about a year ago I asked for that, and it's coming into fruition now. So if you want anything done in the workplace, and if it's in a big company, in my experience, it takes a year. So ask for it now and you'll get it in a year. But I would like to start building up the needs case for that to become a team. And with that, something else that I've spent the last year securing. So I've not just been looking at growing my skills and experience with line management. I also, something else I've never done was writing a strategy or having anything to do with strategy development. And with the resources that our company had for sponsorship, we didn't have a strategy in place for that. And it almost felt that this is another example of, I came in, there was something we didn't have, and I saw it as an opportunity to say, we should build something there. So I've spent the last year building an events and sponsorship strategy for the company, which was approved. And now that it's been approved, I actually have to fulfill what I've said I'm going to do in this strategy and action plan. So it's spending the next year putting the plans in place that I've said will result in XYZ benefits to the business. So I have to make sure that that comes to fruition, track it, monitor it, and hopefully at the end have some key measures of success that I can demonstrate that it was worth my time and their money. So we'll see. We'll see what it looks like in a year.
And that's such a key point as well. Whether it is success or whether it's learning, it's planning something, seeing it through, and taking the outcomes from that. And you're right. Sometimes we do see success and it does work, and we move it forward. Or sometimes it doesn't work, but we take the learning from that, and that takes us in a different direction. But it's so important to focus on what your outcomes are, and then find a way to actively monitor that as you go. Awesome.
Yep,
thanks very much for that, Caroline. Daniel, I'm going to ask you about your. I saw you nodding away when Caroline was talking about mentoring. So I'm interested about your kind of take on that, but also for you again, how is it with the same company? You're looking at moving on. How are you planning to continue building your skills and developing your performance?
Yeah, I guess on the mentoring point, it's quite funny that you're talking about Caroline, because Hugo, with the company that I'm working for just now, have just launched an official mentor program for employees, and it's quite exciting to have that, because you've got potential to get the CEO be your mentee, which is be your mentor, sorry, which is amazing. And I'm just in the middle of thinking whether or not I'm going to apply for it or not. But I am very lucky that over the last couple of years with them, I've had amazing managers who've been almost like mentors themselves, guiding me in the direction. And like you've said, I've always been asking questions, and I felt like I've always been going to the right place for questions as well. And I've had quite a good senior leadership team, and also employees around me and colleagues that have kind of guided me in the right direction. So it's been a collaborative effort. Like, I feel like it's taken a team of people to get me to where I am in my skill set. But I would agree that you can't go into a business, especially after graduating, and thinking, oh my God, I have a degree, especially if your degree is something that you feel like plays such an important role in what you're doing in your career. People, you might think, oh my God, because I've studied this for 4 years, they expect me to know everything, which is quite the opposite. And you'll often find that sometimes what you learn in the books doesn't always play out exactly the same way in real life. So yeah, asking questions and things like that is quite important, and not going in thinking that you know it all. And which brings me on quite nicely onto my next point, which was, I've been with the company for 6 years. I've done over 2.5 years as the sales manager for UK Ireland in summer sales, and I traveled quite a bit. I thought I knew everything about the business, and I had 2 direct reports as well. So I had a little bit of a team there, and I thought this is it, like I know everything. And then in October, November time last year, I applied for a new position, which is the Business Excellence Manager, for a relatively new department within our business, essentially operational excellence, project management, and strategy and planning for our business, because there is quite a lot of growth in the pipeline. I applied for it, and I started that role just before Christmas, and it was almost like a hard reset. Like, I felt like I was back to day one. I felt like it was my first day in the company, even though I knew everyone. I traveled so much. Seen so much of the business. I was like, wow, this is a whole new position for me. It's a whole new area. It's in project management. I don't have a degree in project management. I feel like there's quite a lot of transferable skills from event management. And I hopefully will be taking on a project management qualification funded by Hugo, thankfully, this year. But I think it's funny how you can be within a company and then almost do a hard reset and go back to square one. So I'm back now in that stage again of asking questions. I have a new manager who's been amazing, and she's just been guiding me, and she's almost been like a mentor. And I've had to learn so much new about a business that I've known for years. So I think for me, for the future right now, it's focusing on a new skill set, project management, learning a business that I know from a totally different perspective, and I'll see where I am maybe in a year or two's time, see what happens there. I feel like there's still quite a lot of opportunity within Hugo, And every now and again, I kind of sit back and go, Daniel, have you kind of put all your eggs in one basket here with this company? Because you've been with them for quite a while. But seeing that I've been getting opportunities and I've been trusted and quite handheld, luckily, over the years, it's been good. I have recently, in the last couple of weeks, I've just stepped down as the chair of the board of ESCA. So I've been doing that for about 3 years now, and it feels about the right time to kind of step away. So I'll be stepping away as just like a normal kind of board member, and passing over the reins to someone else. So that'll be nice as well, because I felt like for me, there was almost a point where I was getting more experience from ESCA because it was quite a big position. Being a board member and then being a chair of a board was quite a big deal for me. And I felt like the experience I was getting from that was outpacing what I was getting from my career for a while. But now the two have swapped almost, and now my career has kind of taken the forefront, and I'm getting a lot of experience in this new role, and it's a global role, which is quite important for me in my career progression. So I can't really balance it all. Step away from the charity. And now, yeah, that kind of summarizes, I think, maybe my plans. It's all very open, though. I'm open to what will come next.
But so two things. I think one, that's really valuable and important in itself, because we can never predict everything that's going on. I mean, you guys mentioned COVID earlier on. You know, the things are going to happen that we don't know is going to come down the line. And so actually having that open perspective on let's see what gets presented, and let's see what's interesting, and let's see where I'm going to go with it. And I think both of you are given a really, really good example of the fact that we don't just build our skills in a progressive way and our performance increases and that. So we get to a certain point and then we start something new, and we feel like we're dropping back down. We're back to that point of unconscious incompetence, and then we start again. And that's a revolving door almost. You know, we're constantly going through that process and that cycle, and that's what keeps us interested, whether we're moving to different companies or, as you explained there, Danny, whether you're staying in the same organization, but you're getting the chance to reset and rebuild and to do different things. It's a great opportunity. So I'm going to ask you for one final thing. I'm going to ask you for, if you were, advice to people walking out of the graduation hall this year. If you were giving that advice to yourself, what would it be? Your one top tip? And Caroline, I'm not going to let you say get a mentor, because you've done that one already. So you've got to pick something different.
No, don't worry. I could speak for hours on this, because there's so much, and I don't want anybody to think that because it's been a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years since you graduated that you have any less opportunity to grab the right job at the right time than those who've just graduated. There seems to be this immediate pressure that it's the minute you graduate, that's the opportunity, and if you don't get the grad job in that first year, you're then less likely to move, and this path that people paint you're supposed to follow. But so I think what I would tell myself in terms of how to make yourself more employable, especially because I have now just been on the other side and I've just had 174 CVs for this job that I'm hiring for, and I've gone through every single one of them, and you really, really do need to make sure you make your CV stand out, or your application. In fact, I shouldn't even say CV. I think you need to stand out before the CV even goes in. So different people have different opinions, but I'm a big advocate for, if you know there's a job you want to go for, make yourself known to that hiring manager before you go for it, under the guise of, I'm thinking about submitting an application for this role. Can we have a chat so I can learn more about it? You're not asking them to give you tips for the interview. You're not asking them to, give you a leg up. You're phrasing it as, I want to know more about this role before I submit a formal application. So that's what I'd say first of all. And then the second piece of advice, when I was at Santander, I was speaking to a director and I asked them, how did you get this job as a director? And they said to me that in advance of their interview, they went round all the branches and they went up to the colleagues behind the till and asked questions about student bank accounts, and they came away and they wrote down all the things that went well and all the things they think they would do better if they were managing this process. So they came to the interview and they said, I have been to your branches, I have followed I've had the experience of service from Santander, and this is what I would do if it was me. And they were told that they were the only person that had done that for in advance of this interview. And the other day, there was an alumni from Napier reached out to me on LinkedIn because they saw a job that was on the board at SSE, and they said, I'm really interested in this job. What advice can you give me? And I gave the same advice to them. There's loads of ways that you can connect with a company through events, through public events, not just SSE, any company. And I'd said, this is, that would be a great way if you were able to get that sort of face-to-face interaction. That would be a great way for you to be able to demonstrate that in an interview. And then sure enough, on LinkedIn a few days later, one of my colleagues shared a picture of them at a public event, and this student was in the picture with them. So they'd obviously gone along. And I just thought, you don't realize how much of a difference that's going to make if you're sitting in an interview, being able to say you've done that. So I would definitely say, reach out to the hiring manager first. Don't just do desk research on a company. Get as much face-to-face interaction as you can. And then the third thing is look at what your dream job is right now. Look at what the job description is, and as much as you can, try and attain that in your current role or current position, even if it's in a volunteering role that you do on the side. Do it. And they absolutely do ask all these standard questions in interviews. So tell me a time when you identified an issue at work and what you did to mitigate it, or tell me about a time you had an idea and you implemented it in a business. You will get asked this. So if you don't think your answer is strong enough, force that situation to occur, make it occur, come up with an idea and implement it, even if it's not 1,000,000% necessary at that moment. As long as there's enough of a business need to do it, and it gives you something to speak about and it helps you prepare. So yeah, I'll stop there. But I've got there's lots of things I would say. So yeah, always happy to pick up on it later.
Oh, that's fantastic. No, that's really, gold dust, really, really valuable, Caroline. Thanks for that. And hopefully it's still left you something to say, Daniel.
No, yeah, I was just thinking, well, those are all really good points, and I probably would have said the same thing. But I think that's really good, though. But I also think as well that, especially after you graduate, don't get sucked into like the social media race either. Like, focus on your own personal brand on LinkedIn. If you feel like the career that you're pursuing, and a lot of careers are very, they will work off of LinkedIn, and sometimes you'll get afforded different opportunities to network through LinkedIn and message hiring managers and everything. But also as well, sometimes you can feel a little bit self-conscious when you see other people doing things and achieving things and all that. Don't get sucked into it and don't take it personally. I suppose everyone's on their own little journey, and it doesn't matter how long ago you've graduated, there's always time to start doing all the things that Caroline said. So, if you feel like, you haven't initially like gone straight for what your dream career is, if you haven't gone straight into whatever your degree was in. So like after I graduated, I was in this really weird limbo where I thought, I don't actually know what to do with myself. And that stuck with me for a while. And that's okay. That feeling's normal. And look for opportunities, build experience where you can in the third sector, especially. You'll get so much opportunities in the third sector that you don't initially get in the private sector. Charities are looking for people who've just graduated degrees. They're looking for your expertise, and you can do it. So if you can throw yourself into some volunteering program or anything like that, it can be a minimum number of hours. You can get quite a lot of experience to put on your CV, and shout about it. Shout about the things that you're doing. Share LinkedIn and everything, but don't feel like instantly just because everyone else has gone on these grad programs and these jobs and everything that you're instantly not doing it, because it does take time. It takes so much time to get where you want to be.
That's fantastic. And that kind of brings me to the point that like we scripted it, because that brings me to the point I was going to make at the end anyway, which is fantastic. So thanks for that, Daniel. But it is about the focus for this session is on performance, and it's about achieving the things that we want to achieve. But we set our targets, we set our own horizons, and we decide what success looks like for us, and that's what we drive towards. So it isn't about, as you so well put it, putting pressure on yourself and comparing ourselves to others and saying, well, I should be there by now. There is no should. It's about what feels right for you, where do you want to get to, and what's going to help you get there. And that was the aim of today's session, is to try and put a few more tools in the bag to help us get to where it is that we want to be. So I just want to thank you both so much for sharing your time and your experience and helping us put this kind of training topic into context, so students can kind of see it in that way, as well as just getting the training materials. So thanks again so much for your time and for sharing your experiences today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a great opportunity. Thanks very much, Dave.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.